I never expected myself to become a teacher. I got into my plan A, plan B, plan C, and all of them were in the film industry. My plan F was to teach. Kids are so outspoken. They're so big in imagination. And then the more they grow, like in their teens, they want to find more value and they want to see how could this actually add to me as a person and what can I learn from these films. I joined Ajyal when I was 18. I was a juror actually, just getting exposed to the film and later on the Q&A with the filmmaker themselves. It was always super inspiring to hear their story, hear from them.
Hello and welcome back to Season 2 of the Ajyal Show. Not all storytellers are behind a camera. Some stand at the front of a classroom. In today's episode, we meet a filmmaker turned teacher who found a way to merge her love for cinema with her passion for education. Through her studies in filmmaking, she managed to produce on several short films that traveled to festivals around the world. However, her story doesn't end there. Our guest took her passion for storytelling in the classroom, where she now uses short films, sound, and visual prompts to help students think critically and write creatively. This is a conversation about creativity, teaching, and the unexpected places films can take us. So without further ado, let's welcome our guest, Fatima Dauleh, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, I mean, it's my pleasure. I'm super excited to do this.
I'm excited.
So during Ajyal, what was your role there?
So I joined Ajyal when I was 18. I was a juror actually.
Okay, and what was your favorite part about being a juror?
Watching films that you don't get to see in the cinema. Just getting exposed to the film and later on the Q&A with the filmmaker themselves. It was always super inspiring to hear their story, hear from them. How did they create the film? How much did they take to create the film? What thoughts came into their mind writing the film, and all these things were very inspiring to like talk to the filmmakers and learn from them.
Is there I think of my Ajyal experience and I think of so many moments that stand out like a sore thumb. But is there like a particular moment or moments that really stand out to you and that really you just brings a smile on your face to just recall?
I remember watching For Sama. I don't remember which year it was, but I remember the reaction we had as a group of jurors after the film. We were just so in shock and we were all just quiet. It's always a moment I reflect back on and I would say if a film had that much impact on people. So to have an impact on society is very possible through films, not only through teaching. And the difference between film and teaching is in teaching you see your impact right away. In films it takes a bit longer time. And a second moment I would say about Ajyal jury, I would say there was once this workshop where it was basically delving into how it was basically about sound, but they were talking about how they design sound and how, for example, a gunshot is never the sound that we hear in the film. Is never the thing we had in the shoot. And that for me was a very eye-opening workshop because it talked so much about Foley and it was actually a walkthrough through the sound artist, the Foley artist and his process. And it's a workshop I never actually forget.
It's funny that you bring this up because I remember even for me, one of the workshops that really do stand out was with Falah, who was one of the people I interviewed here. But he said the word Foley and I thought it was a joke because it sounds like a funny word. But then he taught us all about how sounds are made. And it's the same thing with the quietness of the theater. We watched Little Palestine Story of a Siege. And I've never in my life seen so many people be so quiet and cry all together while still being understood in the same way. So I can definitely relate to that. So how was it your experience when you were kind of collaborating with these other jurors and trying to talk about film with them?
I think my experience is very different from you because I wasn't very social with the people over there. I took it more of a learning experience. I needed to learn, so my only contact would be with the filmmaker itself. And then I would go back, write down my notes. I took it like so seriously because I was already at the university and I was already studying film. So I took it like an extracurricular activity to help me aid my education in the film. So it was more of like talking to the filmmaker and trying to learn and analyzing the points that I need to like summarize later for my class.
It's very interesting that you kind of think about it as like an extracurricular in some way, which I think is such an interesting experience. But is there anything else in uni that you did that gave you maybe experience on film that was different than just studying it, let's say, in uni?
When I was in uni, I would say what was very different from like just studying is I got 2 film grants and I was a producer in both the films, and it was like real life experience. So I had to like do everything that is outside the class, talk to people, find locations, allocate budgets. All of these things were not in a book. And it's not something you just learn from reading a book. You have to experience it. You have to try it. You have to make a mistake, learn from it. And I would say that it is one of the experiences at uni that helped me so much to like get into the film industry and just put my feet in the industry.
So after like actually spending time on film sets and then comparing that to learning, did it kind of grow your passion for wanting to be in film sets more in the future?
Yes, definitely. I mean, studying it is always like paper is always different than having an experience. When you're out there and you're trying things and you're making a mistake and then you're trying again, it gives you that real life experience. It feels like a challenge, and every time you finish something, it feels like an accomplishment. But when you're reading a piece, it's very fulfilling, but it's different when you see it like right in front of your eyes. So it's like a cycle. You do one thing, you're already in the next, and an opportunity leads to another opportunity. So it's always like you never get enough of films. I did the first, I wanted to do the second. I did the second, I wanted to do the third, and then I was juggling 2, and then I just wanted to do more and more and more.
And so you said like were a producer on 2 of them.
Yes.
But did you take any other roles on set aside from just those 2 producer roles?
Yes. So I started first as an art assistant. That was the first film that I've ever worked on. The second, I was a boom pole operator. And then the third was Thawb Al Eid, which you were the head of the marketing department for us. And I was the producer over there. And then the fourth film, I was co-producer, co-director as well. And then I just kept on trying more and more departments, sound department, camera department, again, art, just trying different departments. And it depends on like what film and how much time do I have on my plate that I can, invest in each film.
And out of curiosity, was there one particular role that you favored more than the others?
I do enjoy producing a lot, but I felt like in one of my roles, it wasn't part of my role to work with the actors, but I needed to step in and help. So we were working a lot with like the actors, and that's where I felt like I was using the things I've learned as a teacher with the young actors. So it was like the things I do in class are the things I'm doing on the film set. And I felt like, oh, that's such a great merge of the techniques that I've been learning in the teaching industry. And it's all about like helping the actor arrive at their goal. And that's exactly what you do in the class too. So I feel like that for me was very interesting experience. And it was like different, and I did enjoy it a lot.
Speaking of teacher, so how do you go from trying and taking in everything from all the different like departments of being on set and loving studying film so much to getting into teaching?
See, that's the interesting part. I never expected myself to become a teacher. That's one. But when I got into the Summer Institute and Teach for Qatar, I was still not very convinced in the first week. In the second week, I started to get into more workshops. And there's a workshop specifically called Connect with the Child. And that's where I was like, okay, no, this is so what I want to do, because there is so much about connecting with a child. It's so rewarding. It's so fulfilling. And I felt like I could get into the teaching industry first as a teacher, like as an English teacher, but later on, I definitely would have to merge the film with the teaching techniques that I've been learning and I've been getting, through teaching English in government schools. And later on, I have to mix the two. But there's something so rewarding in seeing a child basically get what they need, or like helping them believe in themselves. That is just so like rewarding. And I felt like this is a calling that I want to be in teaching. And I just like took the decision then. And I was like, this is what I'm doing. And everyone was so shocked because I got into my plan A, plan B, plan C, and all of them were in the film industry. My plan F was to teach. And my plan E was empty. Like I didn't have a plan number 5 nor 4. And I got into 3 jobs. And I was like, these are all the things I want to do. Film, one of them was a producer, which is exactly what I wanted at that time. But joining Teach for Qatar was such a different, it's just a different decision. Everyone was shocked. I was shocked. But it's just a job that fulfills my heart a lot. It fills me every single day. And I use a lot of my films to inspire and motivate the girls. So it feels like film industry, because I still did a lot of films while being a teacher. So it feels like all the films that I've been working on, when I talk about them to my students or like they see them on my stories on Instagram or something, these like inspire my girls and they give me a lot of motivation to like teach. But at the same time, I want to write stories about my students, about my experience, so it like pours into each other. So I didn't stop the film industry and I still delve deeper in the teaching industry. So it's they both feed off each other very well. So it didn't feel like I left something behind. I was always taking them with me.
That's beautiful. Off the bat, when you kind of started getting into like teaching and kind of the program, and you reflect also on the things that you learned in uni, is there similarities that you feel that filmmaking and teaching share?
There are a lot of similarities. The main and the foremost is dealing with the film set, like managing everyone on the film set is like managing your class. You have different people, different mindsets, different goals. They're kids. And on the film set, you have that, but with so much more stress because time is money. And like everyone wants to get done with the work and everyone wants it to be the best quality. It's very similar to how you would manage the film set and the stress on the film set to managing the class. In the class, a lot of the time you have to like, as simple as just wanting everyone to be quiet. You have to say certain things like class, they would say yes, like a class code, you know? Once I started to apply that in the film industry, not specifically the class code, but like other things, I started to get feedback from people on the film set that we feel like we're kids on your film set and like we're having so much more fun because what they don't know is I'm applying what I do in my class in the film, like in the film set. So there are a lot of similarities. Also dealing with people, dealing with kids, like especially the actors, there's always something about the actor wanting to see themselves in your eyes as a director or as a producer or as whoever is helping them. And they always want to, especially if they were kids, they always want someone to tell them, you're doing well. Even if you did a mistake, like that's fine. You know, it's not the end of the world. You're a human being. Let's repeat. Let's go again. And that is something I do a lot in my class. In the film industry, it's more obvious because you have the acting and you have everything right on screen and you can see where the mistakes went. But in the class, sometimes you need to push your students so much more. And that's where you gotta encourage them to, it's okay to make a mistake. Just try again and keep swimming. Like never stop. Just keep swimming. Just let it go. Even if it's a mistake, even if you feel so bad about the mistake, it's just a mistake. You're human and part of being human is making that mistake. Do it, learn from it. Just don't repeat it if you could.
So you mentioned that you use a little bit of film inside your classrooms. Now imagine I'm one of your students. Mm-hmm. How is it that you use these like film knowledge or film techniques inside the class to help me learn?
Okay, so there are multiple ways that you can use film in the class. And in every way, it is always different and fun. So the main thing is we want to have fun in the class. How can we have fun? If you can add a video in the beginning, like a short film. So I'll tell you one example. One example was I had a reading about pollution. How can I start the class in a very interesting way? Hook the girls in the beginning, right? So I played a very short film, 2-minute film about a little fish. Main character is the fish and trying to swim, but then plastic bags are all around and then the fish can't swim. So we're already in the lesson, but through a little film that they can watch and be hooked. And then they're like, okay, what do you think the class is going to be about? So it also like builds on their curiosity. And every time they guess the lesson, it's better than when you tell them today we're studying about this. The second part, and that is something I created and I gave as well the other teachers, and we started to do it as a school, was actually film reflections, which is something I learned from Northwestern when I was back as a student. And it's basically, if they did really well during the week, I give them a movie night on Thursday. I give them the movie night anyways, but it's just a way to motivate them. And we watch a film towards the end of the class, middle of the class, or like we do the class as a flipped classroom, and then we have more time to watch a film, and then I give them a worksheet, and it's extra. If you want to do it, do it. If you don't, it's fine. But once I give it to them as an option, most of them get like, that's the homework all of them gives back to me. Why? Because it's fun. We're watching a movie, and then we're asking to summarize it. What did you feel about it? Okay, what do you think about the ending? Could you imagine another ending for the film? And all of these are part of what we actually need in the school. We need to increase their literacy. We need to basically expand their imagination and mind and curiosity. And how do we do that? Usually we ask them to change the ending. We ask them to write about the readings that you're reading. So instead of just making it about the book and the readings, we also add a film. And I usually call it like movie night Thursday. And if I was absent on a Thursday, everyone would be super upset. Miss, we missed the movie night. It's not like anything else that's more important than the movie night that we have every other Thursday or every Thursday, depending on how much time we have. But making so much time for that is such a game changer in my class.
And I'm sure like the kind of maybe some of the rewarding things about teaching is that you maybe stick with the students for a long period of time. And so when you see them kind of being introduced to something like film reflections, let's say, from the beginning to the end, do you see any like visible impacts that it's made on the students that you teach?
One of the things, like the biggest impact I would say of them watching these films is basically all the values we learn from the films, and a lot about their writing styles, like their writing skills, their analytical skills as well. Like a lot of the time they start to think about audio, about sound, and they're like, Miss, how do they create the sound of bones breaking down? And I'm like, okay, let's think together. What do you think? What sound? So we're delving already into Foley without them knowing that this is Foley. So we discuss, okay, what sound do you think could fit into this scene? Or if I want a bone breaking, I'm obviously not going to break a bone. And they start to like guess, Miss, could it be pasta? Miss, could it be bell pepper? Could it be apples? Like, what could it be? And then we start to hear all these sounds off of like, just hearing them. And I try to let them expand on their own questions. Now, do you think that works? And they would be like, no, that doesn't. Like, let's try another sound. And they keep trying and they keep trying until they find a fitting sound. Or the other way around, where we just hear an audio and I ask them to imagine. And then the writing is just expand your imagination. Like, close your eyes. What do you think that sound is? It could be a dinosaur in a street with cars, with waves, and they have to imagine a story. So in the beginning, you find that they struggle a little bit with like, Miss, we want it to be perfect. We don't want to make mistakes. But towards the middle, towards the end, with more of their experience and with how much they're exposed to all these mediums of film, they start to be very fluent and be like, then they start to surprise you, really give you like answers that I myself didn't think of. And that's when you know like, oh, they're not scared to make mistakes, and they're very curious, and they're so open to having all these ideas out there and not being scared or feared that like, what is this idea? Is it really a good idea? Or is it, let me just keep it to myself? No, they become so much open to sharing these ideas.
Speaking of this like concept of, when you first start, they have like, they get over the barrier and then they start to surprise you. Is there like either a film reflection or a piece of creative writing after you made them listen to a sound that like just really sticks with you? Like a moment or like something that one child submitted that you're like, man, I'm never gonna forget this.
I can think of two. The first is there was like a street that I played, like a sound of a street from Japan, and the lesson was about Japan. So I played it in the starter of the lesson, and I was like, what do you think this sound is? And they kept thinking, because it's a street that had cars. It had, so, cars in like the sound of cars also sounds like waves. So you can't tell, is this a beach? Is this, and then there are dinosaurs, like real dinosaurs sounds. And then some people, some music. And then everyone came up with a completely different story. Someone was like, this is a murder scene. Someone was like, this is a movie theater. Someone was like, no, this is a street. Someone was like, this sounds like my dreams. It's so complicated that I can't understand what's going on. It's just like all over the place. And a lot of their answers were very different. And what shocks me is I repeated the same task, the same activity with other teachers, and they couldn't imagine anything. They were so scared or so thinking about what actually makes sense, or like trying to make sense of that audio rather than it could be anything. So I feel like that specific activity made me think a lot about how the younger we are, the more open we are to imagining things and like being very outspoken about them. But the more we grow, the more we become careful, and the more we fear, like what are people gonna think about this? Or like not even people think, but like, does this make sense or does this not make sense? Is this fine? Is this not fine? Especially in the creative industry, like you don't know where your ideas should be. Like, is this a good idea? Shall I keep it in the drawer? Shall I put it out there? Shall I write it? Shall I expand it into a film? And then it's really where we are as like when we are kids versus when we're adults. And as a teacher, seeing that difference is also very eye-opening.
You, of course, have had a lot of success using kind of these film techniques during your classrooms, but at the beginning, when you actually started integrating them, did you find there was some difficult things in terms of how to integrate, how they were being received?
In the beginning, it's always a learning curve. Like, you put a thing out there and you see how do students respond to it. Again, different classes respond differently, different people respond differently. The teachers that are also collaborating with me responded differently to each and every film. So it's always a learning curve. It's always like there's always something to learn from. There's always something to change. And in the beginning, I remember in my first year, I used to only use films in the class as like starters or as just to have fun and watch things and like basically build a stronger relationship with my students. But in my second year, I started to do the film reflections. So it used to I built that over time. It wasn't like one at a time idea, I would say. And I remember in my first year, most of my focus in the film was actually sharing with them my own experience because I was actually shooting 2 of my films during that time. And a lot of the time I would come back to school on Sunday with like a sunburnt face, and they would be like, "Miss, what happened?" And I would show them behind the scenes footage. And I would share with them like the challenges that I've faced and how, like, what did we do to overcome those. And then in my second year is where I started to delve deeper into, okay, let's analyze film, let's understand film more. So I would say I started more like with just my personal touch. And then we started to delve deeper and deeper. And one of the times I even got them a film camera, and I was like, "Girls, do you know what is this?" And they all were like, "Miss, what is this?" And I made everyone, like, it went over to everyone. It was a disposable camera. So they were like, what is this? And they didn't know because they didn't even see these kinds of cameras. All they know is a camera in your iPhone or like in your phone, basically. So it was very interesting to see that even a film camera for them is not something they know. And then I started to basically build on that and teach them about how do we develop these pictures and how do we, get these strips and show them. And it just happened naturally and organically in my classes. But in my second year is where I was like, okay, I learned ABC from my classes and I want to do this and I want to build on it. And then I took it again in my third year and inshallah, keep doing more of that.
Have you tried using these techniques with different age groups? Like, did you get the opportunity to kind of try teaching this method, but through different age groups? And how did they respond to that?
Okay, so I've been teaching grade 8 for 2 years, and then this is the third year, and I teach grade 10 this year. And I tried the same things for different age groups. And I also did another workshop along with the film club in Ajyal for kids that are between the ages of 8 to 12. So I've seen how do different people also react in that way. And I also did multiple film workshops on how to use films for the other teachers. So we're like kind of analyzing and like sharing experience basically of how could films be integrated in the classroom. And every age group responds to it differently. I would say the teens in general, they respond similarly. Kids are so outspoken. They're so big in imagination. They're so excited. And then the more they grow, like in their teens, they want to find more value and they want to see how could this actually add to me as a person and what can I learn from these films. And when they're more adults, I would say they watch it for the fun of watching. And it was completely different as well because it was a workshop and it's a different style. But I would say the younger they are, the more excited they are. But actually, sometimes in my class, like just today, actually, I wanted to tell something to my students. And instead of telling them right in their face, I filmed myself getting unready and removing my makeup in one of the weddings. And I was like, this is a perfect opportunity for me to share with my students. And it's just myself, filming myself just like a vlog. And I was talking to myself on camera and I played it in the class and everyone went quiet. They were all listening and they were all so excited to hear the news or like the thing that I wanted to share. And I was thinking like teaching them harder concepts or grammar through my camera was also such a great thing to do because they all like having me, same person on camera is different than me talking to them. It's just so different. So you can compare that with just having a film in the class too. And you can imagine how much of a difference it makes and how much it helps you. Even as a teacher, it helps me so much in managing my class and the noise in the class and getting to the point without me telling them this is what we're doing. Just putting all these visual aids to help them and visualize the concepts and the learning, especially when it's a reading or a listening, that you want to expand to like beyond the classroom. You want to expand the lesson beyond the classroom. You want to relate it to their lives. So that's all the opportunities that you get to like actually use the film to help you and aid in the class and the class material.
So basically, it's like a full circle moment with Ajyal, that you were there as a juror one time and then you were there as teaching a workshop for the next, which is really, really great. And I hope you feel super, super proud about that. But you mentioned that age group where you were kind of teaching was kind of the younger kids. Mm-hmm. And how did you feel? Like, tell us a little bit more about that experience. Like, how did they respond to it? What were some of the crazy ideas, or what exactly were you kind of teaching them at that point?
So when I was doing the film workshop in Ajyal Film Club, first I was very happy, very proud. I was like, this is such a great moment to like stand here and like merge my film techniques my teaching techniques along with my knowledge about film. And it was like such a moment of realization of how I wish I was that kid one day, and I wish I had film workshops back when I was in school. So it was such a nice moment, to be honest. And if I would say like the biggest thing about that workshop was like preparing for the workshop was super fun because I wanted to make sure that I have this period of time. It's just 40 minutes. And I want to make sure that they learn and we are like working so much on their production. And that's something I learned in teaching. You teach in like maximum 10 minutes. in the class, I sometimes teach in 2 minutes. Like you have to be very concise, very quick, and then still very rich. But you have to make sure that you do the least on your, like your role is the least, and then you have to give the students most of the time of the class to work on something related to what you taught. So they're producing, and that's their highest level of learning. And creating that workshop for me was like, if I created the workshop without my teaching background, I would probably been talking and talking and telling them about imagination. But because I have that piece of information, it was so nice to basically stitch the pieces together and like watch all these students sit down, learn from me just a little bit, and then watch them expand on the knowledge that you gave. And then it becomes a moment of like, I am learning from these kids. And that is like the biggest feeling you get when you're teaching kids, because they teach you so much and they always expand on things that it's very rare for me personally to think about. So it only comes through them. That's my only source. If I want creativity, I have to like get a deep question and ask kids. Like, imagine like I would enter the class and be like, imagine if you woke up and you had a tail, what would you do? And like, we just sit and discuss like, what would I do? Yeah, like such an interesting thing. And then you hear so many answers that actually make sense. And then you delve into deeper and deeper questions, but like these questions that no one asks, and then they come in and answer them. So that's exactly the thing you get in that imagination workshop that I worked on, because it was just an audio that they were listening to. It's just a sound, a soundscape, and then they have to come up with all these ideas. So it's all these things that we don't usually think about that comes up in the workshop. So it's such a full circle moment.
Another thing that you mentioned was that you actually were teaching other maybe coworkers or teachers about the methods that you've been using. And I'm curious to know, how was that received by other teachers? Because it's not really that traditional in the way that you are teaching these children. So how was it received by them? And maybe what's some of the feedback they had about it?
To be honest, the teachers I used to work with loved it a lot. And they actually used to apply it in their classes too. So we wouldn't go according to the grades. We would set different films that works for the whole age group. So like grade 7, 8, and 9 together. And what was very interesting is I wouldn't work on that strategy alone. The other teachers would work as well, and they would suggest films, and they would suggest, okay, let's rearrange the reflection. Let's work on this differently. And they would also give me their input. So it's not my work alone. Instead, it's actually motivating other teachers to also put their input. And there's always something from different people that could help you basically have better work. So all the teachers, or most of the teachers actually, were very excited. And in the moment you see the effect you have in the class and how motivated they are, it motivates you again to do such things again and again.
I'm going to play a devil's advocate a little bit, right? So when I think of a child, or I think of my siblings, for example, and I give them the first task to watch a film, and then I ask them to write a reflection, I can kind of preemptively imagine that they'll be like, oh, I have to write now? Like, you know what I mean? You know, some kids or some people in school will have this type of thought. So how do you manage that? How do you keep them engaged? How do you still manage to kind of build that kind of film knowledge and film culture without it maybe feeling like a chore?
Very great question. You start by making it optional. It's not a must. Whoever wants to do it, do it. If you don't, it's okay. Just take the paper, examine it, and do it if you want. It's not graded. It's just extra, and we want to have fun. In the beginning, maybe 5 or 6 people would take it, and then once we come back the next week and we discuss that film reflection and the opinions, more and more students would want to tell you their opinions too. Once you value their opinion a lot, and as a teacher, I take the time to actually go through what they wrote in the class and read together and expand on that, more students would want to also have their opinions voiced. So you motivate them that way. And there is something about film, because it's such an unspoken no one teaches film in schools. So there's something so exciting about it. So a lot of the time they're actually so excited. So they don't see it as a chore. But if they saw it as a chore, I would go back and like make it optional and help them. The other thing is I ask them to write as simple as possible. Like don't make it film reflections of a million pages, just a paragraph. Could be bullet points, could be sentences. You could even draw about the film. You don't need to only use writing specifically. You could write, you could summarize it, you can reflect, you can try to draw the character, you can draw the character in different outfits. So it's not a specific one kind of activity that you come up from each film that we watch, but making it variety. So a choice board would be very helpful for them because there are students that love writing. There are students that love drawing. There are others that only love watching and talking about it. They want to present about it. They want to reenact it. So you basically build on all these skills, all these talents in the classroom, and however way they bring it up, it's fine. It's no problem if they don't write. As long as we're learning about films, we're showing that understanding, we're reflecting, that's all I care about.
So you're here telling me there's a bit of reverse psychology with the optional thing. I just wanted, for people who maybe don't know what a film reflection is, or maybe never got the chance to maybe dissect films that maybe the way that we did in uni is, what is a film reflection, especially for the kids that you teach? What does that consist of? What questions are we asking?
So at the university, a film reflection is watching the film focusing on one element at a time. So for example, I'm going to watch a film. I'm only going to focus on color. What did they use? What colors did they use? When did they use them? Or sound. I'm only going to focus on sound. When did they use these sounds? When did they pop? When did they put them? Why did they put them? And then I would try to understand and try to make patterns and try to make sense of these. So when I make my own film, I can create these patterns and put them in the film. And then other people can find it natural, but also basically find meaning in not spoken elements. Now, what I do in my school with my students is I don't necessarily focus on element by element. We focus on the character arc mostly and the events and how they took place, basically the plot, and that's the most focus on, and of course values. And a lot of the time it's critical thinking of if you were in their shoes, what would you do? So I try as much as possible to cater the reflection to their age group. And if I find a student very interested in sound, or like I want to push her more, I would give her individually. But the general, I would ask them to like write a summary of what they saw. And they struggle a lot in the beginning to summarize what they saw. And then the deeper we go and the more we watch films, the more I ask them to like, okay, what value did you learn? And if you were in their shoes, what would you do? And reimagine the story. And sometimes I ask them to retell the story, but then in their own words. So it's not a summary. No, they have to retell it in their own way. And that's actually a very interesting way because you force them into using other vocabulary, other style. The character should probably be with a different, like from a different age. Like I challenge them a little bit to just like expand on their imagination as well.
So is it safe to say that the core is kind of the story, like how they're kind of connecting with the story? And I'm sure naturally maybe it comes along where they kind of make some of those connections that maybe even though you're not really focusing on a particular element, I'm sure that it just comes up just by them kind of interacting with the film.
Most of the time they do focus on the plot and like what exactly in the character that made them act a certain way, which is something we delve a lot into we delve a lot about back in the university, because we like every action on screen should have an intention, and I make them delve deeper into like, okay, if they acted a certain way, why did they do that? And if they want to act a certain way, what is something they need to put before to make the action that you want to make sense? So a lot of it is actually, about like writing the story itself.
I wanted to talk a little bit about, the storytelling aspect of when you teach kids. So when you're looking at these films, how do you actually teach them the concepts of storytelling and how to analyze that? Like, what are the basics?
I start with analyzing the five senses. So, what do you think we can see? What do we hear? What can you taste? What can you smell? And what can you feel? All together. And we start to build a little bit on each sense. And from there, we start to build on like the character and what is the character feeling, seeing, feeling, sensing, and all of these things together. And I try to break it for them as simple as possible when they're building their characters. And then I delve with them deeper into, okay, what is the setting looking like? Why is this thing very important to be in the setting? Meaning it should reflect something in the character. And we later talk about, of course, like how the story starts. You have the rising action, like the inciting incident, the rising action, and then the climax, and then again, the falling action and the ending. But not only talking about that in forms of like, these are the elements, but rather give them examples of what does it mean. And it could be as simple as giving them a very short story, and later on they start to build on it. But the main thing for me is using their senses and always thinking of, okay, what can I add that I didn't add in writing? Because when you're writing a film or you're writing a screenwrite, like you're writing a script, you need to think about the same story but with more elements. It can't be just like what happened and what was said. It should be what they felt. What did they see? What colors were around them? Because all these things also adds up to the feeling of the audience watching it. So it's very important for me to like delve deeper into how do these actually impact your film and why are they so important? The setting, the mise en scène, the sounds that you add, the colors that they're wearing, how they're dressed up.
Wow. And do you find it that kids maybe respond like, or find it easier to, let's say, for example, break down a character than, let's say, break down a plot?
It totally depends on how exposed are they already to stories. If they are people who read a lot of novels, it's very easy for them to break plots. Very easy. And characters. And you would find them reading murder mysteries and like Agatha Christie and like very, very deep, like things that are actually very deep. And at the same time, you would find other kind of students that find it more difficult. And again, with students being from different backgrounds, different students perceive things differently. And certain students take more time than others. So it's really subjective to each student. But some of them enjoy character more, building character and talking about their characters more. And some are just so focused on what is actually happening. So they could go through events without taking much attention without giving much attention to who the character is. Again, they're kids, they're learning. You let them go. It's fine. Let the idea flow, let it go. And then you basically give them feedback to build their character a little bit more. Focus on, okay, if you think that has to happen, what in the character should be there? Or the other way around, if they're interested in building their character first, if such a character is an ABC characteristics, what do you think they're going to act like? So both ways, you as a teacher, you basically go around it to help them arrive at the end result in whatever way that is more comfortable to them.
And do you find that when they spend time doing these reflections when they're watching something, so breaking down the character, the senses, the plot, do you find that slowly over time it kind of starts to translate actually into their writing, where they kind of maybe, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, like integrate those principles into their writing?
Definitely, because towards the end of each year, we have almost the end of each year, we have like a story that they have to write, and you see the difference. They like the amount of quality in these stories, first semester versus the second semester. And again, once you give them like a book review, because that's also part of their syllabus, they have to write book reviews. Instead, you find them delving into movie reviews and making it sound like it's a book just to fill into the criteria. So there are things that they can use and utilize from the films that we do and the books that we read in class into the syllabus. So it's not a one-way thing. It's a mix, it's a merge. And you find that students find the best ways to merge everything we learn in the class. So even if I said something in the class, you would find them merging it into their writing. And it's always in the best possible ways. Like, even if I didn't think about it, it somehow always lands into place. And it's always in the most fun ways and the most unexpected ways that they mix all these things and they merge them and they come up with like the best pieces, to be honest.
I think you're so lucky to be privy to such a hub, I think, of imagination. Like, I think you're definitely right about how much kids, I think, are so much more daring to imagine than adults. And I think it's so cool that you get to be exposed to that and to also motivate that.
I'm actually the luckiest person on earth to be their teacher.
So I have quite an interesting question, right? Is that you do teach English at the end of the day, which means that even if you do these film reflections or you do any of the film techniques that you take, at the end of the day, like, you need to also be able to, I don't want to say grade, but you want to be able to evaluate also the skill level of the student that's with you. How do you kind of balance between being able to give them maybe enough feedback on maybe the actual English part without maybe demotivating them from feeling like they can be creative, like there's an open space for them to explore that imagination, that creativity?
I try as much as possible to keep all my film work with them not graded. So we just discuss it, because I always tell them there's nothing that's wrong, there's nothing that's right. And it's all your opinions. It's subjective for a reason. And whatever idea you come up with, it is not going to be graded based on the idea. Rather, it's just how you wrote it and like how organized it is and like the flow of ideas. So I try to delve into the technical aspects of English rather than the idea and the quality of their work, because the quality of their idea is their idea. We can delve deeper into it. But I never put a criteria that is like, does this idea make sense or not? So as much as possible, just keep it with it, like focusing on the spelling, on, again, different age groups, you have to focus differently, but like on like the technical aspects of English. And the more films they see and the more you give them like feedback, sandwich feedback, you tell them this is amazing, thank you for the effort, and then I want you to work on this and this and that, and then you got this. You see them skip the two buns and they just want to read what you actually have to get, what you actually have to say, because they know. And at that point, you already have this great level of trust with them. So whatever you say as a teacher, they want to hear it because they know that that part is actually going to help me develop. So the more, I would say, the better relationship you have with them, the more they want to hear your feedback.
And after 3 years of teaching this way, do you think every classroom should include cinema?
Why not? It was so amazing, and it's always very motivating and so inspiring. And it is such a great way to break out of the traditional classroom. And it creates this very great way and natural, organic way to open up for so much more conversations with your students. So why not?
Another thing is that you said that really stuck with me was that you find yourself learning from them as well. Do you find yourself maybe somehow, some way also learning about film through them?
I learned to believe in myself because of them. So a lot of the time, I have an idea and I honestly don't think it's the best. I would suggest it in the class, like, girls, what do you think of ABC? And they would start to like build for me on it. Like, and it suddenly becomes just the best idea in the whole wide world. And they don't know that they have that impact on me. They think I'm the one that only impacts them. But what actually happens is it's a two-way thing. They impact me a lot. And I do remember on one of my film sets, I came back from like, we were filming on the weekend and we came back, and on Sunday, a few girls were like on their mini boards. They were like, we're proud of you. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's like, it's such a great thing to see, but also they build so much for me, to be honest. Like, they fuel me for films, and I use them to fuel my films. So it's just nice to see students actually like interact with you in like anything related to films.
Yeah, I mean, the best way I think I could describe what I just heard is it feels very human. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did you ever maybe let any of your students watch any of the films that you were a part of?
Most of my classes have seen most of my films, if not all of them. Maybe few like films that like they actually watched most of my films, or if they can't watch the film, like if the film is still in film festivals or something, I would like let them watch the behind the scenes, and the behind the scenes is usually also very interesting. And I edit for them not only the film work, but if I travel, I edit for them like my vlogs, and I would literally be like, wait, I need to film this for my students. Wait, I need to tell them how I felt after scuba diving, you know? And a lot of the times I also use all of these experiences that I've been on while traveling and film it and then show it to my students. It adds a lot to the classroom. And a lot of the times it's just like students want more, and the more personal it is, the more loving they are to it. Like if I just show them any film from like the internet, or if I show them my film, they'd all like be very inspired. And it takes a while for you to let a student believe in themselves. So when I show them my process and then I show them how I am trying to believe in myself. Okay, but see, this is the result of I tried, I believed in myself and I was trying my best. I made mistakes and these were the challenges. And then they see that this teacher is like believing in herself and she's taking all these lessons and then she's building, and then so the film is there. They start to believe in themselves, because if you can't believe in yourself and you can't show them that the result of your work is actually there, how can they believe in themselves and find hope in this world? So the more hope, the more belief I show them that I have in myself and my films, the more they are like becoming better citizens in the classroom. And the more like the easier it is to manage the classroom, the easier it is to just let their ideas flow and just accept that we are humans and we're learning from each other.
I think it's so cool that you do these like small little vlogs for your students. And I'm curious to know, did you ever actually bring a camera for them to actually create something with? So you talked a lot about the film reflections, but has there been an experience where they actually get a chance to be behind the camera and make something?
That's actually very interesting that you asked, because I just remembered in my second year of teaching, I worked with few students and we created a film together and we shot it in the shortest possible time, and it was like in the simplest way, and it's just in a classroom, and it was like we're trying to talk about something political but make it very simple, like out there, and we actually got a film award from the ministry, and I think we got the third place. So I made my students film, act, but I was the one editing, and it was actually very fun to see them like come behind the camera and like act, and they were so motivated. So even after I wasn't their teacher any longer, they still did the same activities with their next teacher. They're like, Miss, we used to do this and this and we want to do more. And they created a second film when I wasn't their teacher and I didn't even work on that film. But it's the same group of students that wanted to do something. They did it the first time with you, and the impact is still going to continue whether or not I'm there. They still did it the year I wasn't there with them. They still did it and they still had fun. So it is actually very fun to let the students also work with you and, you know, create films with you.
And for teachers who are kind of looking at this and wondering, maybe I want to do something like this, what advice would you give them to kind of break this into their classrooms, to start these type of methods, including film, into their classrooms to kind of enrich the youth practically?
I would say try it as much as possible. It could be in a starter, a 2-minute video in the beginning, a short film that's like 5 minutes, no longer than that. I know a lot of teachers would say we don't have time in the classroom, but allocate time and like really focus on that. And it's very important to keep asking feedback from your students. Like, which films did you like? What do you want to watch next? Just a week ago, I asked the students I asked my students to pick the film they want, and they picked a film and realized that everyone enjoyed it, not because of the film, but because they picked it. The film was amazing, yes, but like giving them autonomy in the class and basically sharing with them that we're trying to build this environment together, and it's not just teacher led, it's together. Hearing their voices is very important. Their opinion matters to me the most, and they have to know that their opinion matters. The class would run based on what they want, even if I'm not doing it based on what they want. It's very important to include even a little bit of what they actually want, because if that's the time they feel like your class actually matters. If you make them feel like they matter to you, that's when you matter to them back. So if you give them, they give you back.
And why do you think, or what is it intrinsically about film? I know you said that it's a bit of an unspoken kind of, let's call it like a language, but what is it about film when you kind of see, I think especially with the fact that we have now, we're always constantly watching videos online, but like to have something that's more like something that you need to be more attentive to. What is it about films that really you feel like allows them to make that connection?
You know how sometimes you want to say a lot of things, but then you don't know how to say it, and you hear a song that says exactly everything you wanted to say. You go through an experience and you don't talk about it, and then you see it in a film, and you're like, I relate so much to that character. That connection we have as human beings to art, whether it's a film, whether it's a song, or a reading, a story, a book, there is something that we need from these art forms, a sense of connection that makes us feel fulfilled and speaks about the things that we don't usually speak, or speaks about it in a different way that we didn't think about before. So there is this connection that we build and we have with films that we as human have with art. Even if we don't explore it outwardly, it's always there. So the moment you tell any person, let's have a movie night, you would find them mostly agreeing to it. And I think it's more of the connection that we build and we make with each other because of these films and because of that kind of art.
That was enlightening, actually. And I do want to say, I mean, thank you, I think, as someone who's a human being who has the opportunity to have learned and been in a situation where I get education, to think that there are people like you out there that are really integrating different non-traditional ways, especially something like film. And I love the fact that you said, like, you know, that there's not only the actual watching the film, but when you even said how you're like in set and how you compare that to managing your time, I think your students are very lucky to have you. And I'm so excited for all the teachers or aspiring teachers to watch this. And I really do just want to thank you for your time and everything that you've said today. And you're amazing.
Thank you very much for having me. It's such a great time to be here with you, and especially with you. And I really had a lot of fun talking to you and having this lovely conversation with you.